We'll call this meeting of the Newark City Council Finance Committee to order. Members present are Mrs. Floyd, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Costa, and myself. We do have two pieces of legislation on our agenda this evening. The first piece is to consider resolution number 15-105, authorizing the mayor to make an application to and enter into agreements with the Ohio Department of Transportation State Infrastructure Bank for a loan in the amount of $6,630,000 for the Mount Vernon Road improvement projects, authorizing the execution of all documents necessary to effectuate the same and declaring an emergency. Mr. Moorhead's at the podium.
Well, hopefully that description was somewhat self-explanatory. We have been in discussions with ODOT and their state infrastructure bank about this loan, and the project is currently about a $10 million project. We've got about $2.6 million of federal funding on the roadway construction, the roadway and bridge construction part of it. We've got about $1.2 million on the through the Transportation Alternatives Program, which will help take care of some of the decorative elements of the bridge and some of the lighting and sidewalk work. And then earlier this year, we added the installation of the sanitary sewer and the separation of sanitary sewer, storm sewer, and some water line work also on the project. So when we add all those things in, it brings us up to about the $10 million. And we've got preliminary approval of the loan, but this is the piece of legislation that will allow us to move forward and sign the loan agreements and move forward with the project. The project's scheduled for bidding through ODOT in January, the end of January. So we're asking to have the two-day reading rule waived for this in order to get it to ODOT as soon as possible. So if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
What's the total timeline of the project?
For construction, It'll be over 2 construction seasons throughout the 2016 and 2017 season. So we anticipate by October or November 2017 to be finished with construction.
Do you have any artist renderings of what the bridge and everything's going to look like when it's...
I do.
Are they in electronic format?
Yes.
Can you forward that to the committee?
Sure.
Any other questions? Motion by Mr. Bubb.
I'll second it.
Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any other questions, comments from the committee? Mr. Marmee.
So what's the difference in the loan and like doing any kind of bonds or anything like that?
Not really any difference. I mean, the loan rate is 3% on this, similar to what we would get on the bonds. Okay. I think I don't know if Steve's here or not. I think this does not go against our credit rating as a bond or a note would.
Okay.
This is for 20 years, 3% for 20 years. The annual payment is about $247,000. And the split is pretty much third, a third, a third. The 1/3 to be for roadway stuff. The other 2/3 are the sewer, water, and storm sewer portion of it.
Okay. So they say about $247.
Yes. And the payments will begin in 2018.
Okay, I'm kind of lost. 3% interest on $6.6 million is $198,000 a year just for the interest.
I've got the estimated payment schedule. I could email you if you're interested, Doug.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments from the committee? Questions, comments from the audience? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
All Our second piece of legislation for this evening is to consider resolution number 15-107, appropriating monies for the current expenses of the municipal corporation. This is dealing with $36 payment from the stormwater utility going to the street department when Mr. Loomis is approaching the podium.
Yeah, this is just an operating transfer that when we transfer money out of the street department does a certain amount of work for the stormwater work, and so they get paid through a transfer, and this is to transfer money that was not budgeted for this. We went over budget by $36,000 this year on what we're going to pay them for the work that they have done. So a little more work than we had anticipated that they were going to do. So this comes out of the unappropriated balance of the stormwater fund. So,
questions, comments from the committee?
Motion.
Motion, Mr. Bode. Second, Mrs. Floyd. Any other comments or questions? Comments, questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Loomis. That concludes the Business and Finance Committee. Up next is Service.
Call the Service Committee meeting to order. Members present are Mr. Blake, Mr. Rath, Mr. Bubb, Mr. Roletta, and myself. Our first resolution is 15-103, authorizing the Director of Public Service to execute a contract for reimbursement of legal representation of indigent persons for calendar year 2016 with the Licking County Board of Commissioners for the City of Newark, Licking County, Ohio. Service Director Reddick.
Mr. Chair, I don't think I could have said that any better. It's a simple contract for 2016 for the reimbursement of legal representation of indigent persons. Motion.
Second. Bubb. Second by Mr. Rath. Any questions from the committee? Any questions from the audience? All those in favor of moving resolution 15-103 on to full council signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Moves on 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Resolution number 15-104, establishing the base rate for the stormwater utility service charge as authorized by the codified ordinance of the City of Newark, Ohio. Mr. Loomis.
well, what you have before you is we met several months ago regarding some issues around the city and some projects that were pending in the stormwater utility, and the question came, what is the cost to do those projects and what's it going to take to get that done? And so what I have prepared before you is a business plan of what it would cost us to do these projects. This is in the Cherry Valley Road area and the Buckeye Avenue area. Currently, and I think I've provided you with some information, I just want to make sure I put a disclaimer with that. Some of that information some of it is actual numbers from 2014, some of it is projected numbers for 2015, some of it is budgeted numbers for 2016, and some of it is looking ahead into 17 and 18 where those numbers are at. So just so you know, it gives you a good picture of where the utility is at right now. We kind of run the utility as by committee. We have a monthly stormwater meetings and discuss these projects and do these things. So as a committee, we've kind of decided that we've kind of got a limit as to what we want to do for how much of the percentage of the stormwater budget is going to be devoted to debt. How much is for operation, and how much is for operation and maintenance. And we think at this point in time, looking into 2017, we're really at a max of where we want to be as a utility, looking at our debt ratios and how much money we have spent for these projects that we currently have on the book. I have to say we've done a lot of great projects around the city with this money, and a lot of things have happened. Also want to say that, the last rate increase was in 2012, so it's been 4 years since we've had any rate increase in the stormwater utility. So as we look at where we're at with the budget right now, we spend about $400,000 a year. We budget it every year for what we're going to call small projects. things around the city that have to get done, and we hire contractors to do. We as a group have decided that money we really don't want to touch to dedicate to additional debt, because we do a lot of great projects with that amount of money. Other money, we got some money for compliance to the regulations and that kind of stuff. So we feel like we've got some good ratios right now, and that's where we're going to be. If we want to do more, we want to continue on looking down the road. This is a 10-year. I try to get, when you look at these things, one thing we don't want to do, at least in my opinion, I think the rest of the committee's opinion, is have huge increases. Sit here with an increase, say, well, I need to double the rate because we got all these projects on the board. So this is a way to increase this, and I think that number that I have in here is somewhere around the 2% increase a year for the next 10 years, which I think is doable for a lot of people. This is what we think, this is what we've projected as to what it's going to cost to do these projects. And putting it out there as if we want to do it, that's where we're at. I guess I'll take any questions or.
Any questions from members of the committee? Mr. Rapp?
Yeah, excuse me, under your scope of work, you talk about a priority 1 area in Buckeye Avenue and a priority 7 area in Buckeye Avenue and then Cherry Valley Road work. What is the difference between priority 1, priority 7, and Cherry Valley not having any priority at all?
Well, I probably shouldn't have put those in there, but the reason those are primary, that came from a report that we did. After I did that, and I read that afterwards, and I thought, probably that's going to be a question from somebody. We did a report, ADR did a report for us on the Buckeye Valley area, or Buckeye Avenue area, and they prioritized a bunch of things within that, with the work that was being done in that area. And they went, how many, you remember, Brian, how many, like 40 priorities or something like that came out of that. And we looked at those numbers and said, well, really, these are the 2 projects that really need to get done the way we want to see them get done. So I should have just said there's 2 project areas that we want to see it get done to get this thing to work. But within the report, so if you ever go look at that report and you look at priority 1, you've got priority 7, those are the ones we think are the ones that need to get done first.
So there's 2 projects that you want to get done. What are the 2? The Buckeye Avenue and Cherry Valley Road? Is that how you would classify it?
Right, but Buckeye Avenue is divided up into a couple projects because they're bigger projects. There's Buckeye Avenue that's $2.5 million. The $5 million one is really the Wyant, Idlewild, and Harris Avenue area. That's been a problem for a lot of years. And then the Buckeye Avenue is actually Buckeye Avenue from 21st to 27th Street. There's a real drainage problem, and we got a number of homes down in that area that are almost to the point of being inhabitable because of water problems down in that area. So that's why it's a high priority for us. So, and that's been going on for years. So, and then the Cherry Valley Road is the area in the around the corner there where the Market Basket is, in that area. So.
Well, yep. Thank you. You say on Cherry Valley it's from West Main to the Route 16 intersection. How much?
Well, I
don't want to stifle that in any way, shape, or form, but I'm wondering how much money we're spending north of Reddington that might be for just a short period of time, a year or 2 or 3, or when the Thornwood intersection comes through.
Certainly, that's a point of discussion that needs to be talked about. But I put that in there as the area because that's how
it's a generalized
to where the pipe would have to go to take care of that area. We got to run pipes over to that area. That's basically that's kind of a simple way it has to be. But basically flowing downhill because the river over Reddington Avenue or Reddington Road is where the Raccoon Creek is. That's where water will be discharged to. So.
Okay.
What kind of a general time frame? Maybe you answered that. What kind of a general time frame are we looking at with Buckeye Avenue and Cherry Valley?
Well, this is a 10-year proposal, so probably within the next 6 to 8 years, these things are going to have to start happening, and this would be a way to get money in place to do those. I mean, at 15 cents the first year is not going to get me enough money to do
plans.
to do it now. We're getting plans, but that's how we kind of, and I think this is kind of how we've set up the utilities to do these things and kind of, I mean, could you say, okay, we want to do this project 4 years from now and we want to raise the rate 4 years from now? Yeah, that's an option. You could do that, but the rate's going to be $1. You know, and that's a little harder for people to budget, you know, and you know, so we collect a little bit of the money. That's how we pay for some of the engineering ahead of time. So that doesn't go into our debt. You know, we're collecting some cash, and so we can pay for the engineering for that at that point in time. And we don't have to borrow as much then. That's kind of how we've set up most of our projects, and that's how we've done that. So.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lewis, I think it's important, because I know I've been concerned about the amount of debt that we've been accumulating. Could you just go over the last page for us, talk about the debt schedule, and as debt falls off, and how this move would impact future debt? Just going over that last page for us.
Well, I mean, how we would see the whole, we're looking at a 20-year debt schedule is what we would kind of, now the utility's only been in existence for 10 years. And so we're not only halfway through that schedule. And so X amount of money, about $1.2 million we see is what we can afford in debt. And we're at that point right now until that other debt starts falling off, and then we can start these new projects and gain that debt up. Now obviously we got inflation, there's some other issues to go along with that, but in general that's how we would see that happening. So this is just a list of our current debt. Mm-hmm. You know, we're right now at about just under $12 million in debt, and I call it debt commitments because we haven't, some of that debt's not completely done yet. You know, some of these aren't going to happen until 2017 and 2016, but that's what I'm talking about in the future here. So some of these numbers are a little bit don't balance out exactly, but we're looking at what's going to happen a couple years from now that we've got commitments to do. So and so that's how we've kind of run the debt and the debt structure in the water and wastewater department. You know, trying to avoid large increases, so you get enough and you budget enough in debt that every 20 years now things start falling off, and now you got money coming back in to do those the next project. Unfortunately, with stormwater and water and wastewater utilities, we're just a continuous construction project. I mean, there's always something to build. The next thing is there, and so that's how we see this utility working as well. You know, we've always got the next project to go on. And you can read down through. I mean, the Garfield McKinley project, the Channel Postal project, the CSO 1007, the 1030 project, the projects we did with the 2012 bond, and the downtown project, and these other projects. Really been some great projects that have gotten done, and just would not have happened without this utility. But so, does that answer your question, or do you want something a little bit?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. And you did provide me some additional information earlier on, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Bennett? Any questions from the audience?
Make a motion.
Second. Motion by Mr. Buck, second by Mr. Rath. All in favor of moving this on to full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Moves on 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Lewis. And that concludes the Service Committee business. And next up is rules.
Okay, we're going to call this Rules Committee meeting to order. Present are council members Floyd, Guthrie, and Marmee. First item on the agenda is a ordinance 15-31, creating Chapter 218 of the Codified Ordinance of the City of Newark, Ohio, regarding mandatory ethics training for certain elected and appointed officials. I believe Mr. Guthrie is going to just speak on that from the chair.
Well, I thought I would. Is it okay if I just make a motion to bring forward the amended version, which I'm assuming would be
1531A?
1531A.
Correct.
And then, if it's okay, I'll explain
Certainly.
this, and then you can explain the amendments.
Sure, certainly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, what the ordinance does is it would require every 2 years elected and appointed officials to have 2 hours of ethics training. That training can be done via the Ohio Ethics Commission or the Ohio Municipal League. And my understanding from the Ethics Commission is that they conduct the trainings of the Ohio Municipal League. So it's basically by the Ohio Ethics Commission. The trainings can be done online. They also have webinars. I actually communicated again today with their training coordinator, and she indicated that they are willing to even come to the community at no cost, as long as you have 50 folks who are willing to participate, which I wouldn't think would be a problem if we invite our neighbors to participate. The other thing that was indicated is that if a member of council has an interest in an advisory opinion or an appointed official, that they can generally turn advisory opinions around within 7 days. So anyhow, that's the purpose of it, and that's why I brought it forward.
And Mrs. Floyd, are you going to second his?
Yeah, I'll second it. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The amendments that are being made are just basically, it stated elected officials, and we wanted to make sure it was clear. If someone is appointed to a position but not yet elected, they too will also be required. So we expanded the language to include elected and appointed to an elected position, if you're appointed to an elected position, because it's one of those, technically if I'm appointed, I don't have to abide by that ordinance. So we did clarify that. And then the other thing that we added is that the law director is able to grant additional time if there is any kind of circumstances that would cause somebody not to be able to do it within the time frame. The law director is allowed to. For example, let's say the scheduling and the timing is just like 1 month off. He could grant the exception because the course that is being offered is 1 month away or something along those lines. We wanted to extend that not to just somebody who is newly appointed or elected, but also to anybody that is required to do this. And it's just one of those things, you just never know what comes up. And basically, the law director would have to be the one giving that permission. It keeps it away from the appointing authority, you know, or the clerk or anybody like that. And those are the only two changes from the original ordinance. So, questions from anybody on the committee? Anyone in the audience? Yes, Mr. Rath?
Mark, you said something about them being able to turn around an opinion in 7 days. What on this ordinance allows that to happen? Is it allowed to happen or can't happen prior to this ordinance passing?
Really, the 7 days doesn't. The ordinance, and I apologize, I should have actually mentioned that, Mr. Rath, in the discussion of the rule, which will come after this. The ordinance doesn't address requesting an opinion from the Ethics Commission, so there's nothing really in the ordinance that would apply to that. I just sort of got ahead of myself.
Can we request an opinion today?
Absolutely. Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Yeah, I've asked for opinions a number of times in the 10 years I was on council, just to make sure. I guess the best example I can give you was when I stepped aside to go to work at ODOT, because I had to come up with a quick decision. The law director provided me some assistance. He directed me to the Ethics Commission, which was a good thing to do. and the Ethics Commission advised me, and all that happened within a 4 or 5 day period. And actually, the Ethics Commission said I could have remained as council president, but the governor's office was not keen on it, and I knew that, for instance, in a case of serving as council president, let's say we had to vote on an ODOT contract, and in the position I was in, I was involved in ODOT contracts, so I just didn't think it passed the smell test, and that's why I resigned.
Any other questions or comments? I'm just going to comment that any time that we can enhance ethics in this situation, ethics training, it's something that's required in a lot of different capacities. Whether you're in some type of business in the state of Ohio, there's a lot of requirements with continuing education that requires ethics training that's involved in it. It's mandatory. In addition, a lot of other elected positions require it, and other municipalities, and I don't think that it's anything that's a hardship to do in the time frame. And actually, whenever you take an online course, they usually update them, and they have pretty current type of situations. So you do kind of pick up on what might have happened, because usually they change the names to protect the guilty. And so therefore you kind of get some examples of things that have happened in the past. So it really does kind of keep you up to date on some of it. Although, as just the ordinance states, it is difficult for anybody to keep up with all of it. So I'm definitely in support of this legislation. So.
Mr. Chairman, can I just
yes, certainly.
One other thing that, and you just alluded to, that quite often what the Ethics Commission does is they have so many opinions on the books that it's almost boilerplate opinions, and there's so many similar circumstances, and you can pick the phone up and call them, and they can look for an opinion that's similar to your situation, and that's why they can turn their advisory opinions around pretty quick. Thank you.
Any other comments? Those in favor of passing 31A onto full council signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion passes 3-0. Next item on the agenda is basically pertaining to a rule change. And Mr. Guthrie, I believe, are you going to speak on that too?
Well, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Rule 14.1 is what was identified as Law Director Sassen drafted it. He felt this would be the best place for it to fit. And basically, all it is attempting to achieve is to reinforce for every member of council that's a part of our rules that we be knowledgeable of the ethics laws that apply to us. It is, I think, pretty innocuous, but at the same time, I think it sort of raises the bar to a point where we're saying by adopting these rules that we accept the obligation to have knowledge of how the ethics law impact us as members of council.
Any questions from anyone on the committee or comments? I'm going to voice just a couple of opinions, and I shared this with Mr. Guthrie, and I'm just, this rule it kind of restates a lot of what is already in our oath of office. It restates what is already required of us through the Ohio Ethics Commission and through the practices that we have. as far as trying to raise the bar, our bar, we can't go any higher than what I feel the Ohio Ethics Commission is. As far as, trying to say that somebody has to go to and get an opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission, then that raises the bar of privacy, because therefore we cannot ask that question of anybody, because it's a privacy situation. Anything that you do when you contact the Ohio Ethics Commission is in complete confidence, and they will not share the information, whether you called and asked a question or anything like that. The only time it becomes public record is if there is an issue or an incident that has been proven. In my opinion, all this does is creates a situation where someone could ask, well, did you abide by Rule 14.1? And if the answer is, well, no comment because of privacy issues, then it could be construed as, well, you're hiding behind the law in order to whether or not you're following council rules. So I see where it could become an issue in the future. I don't feel personally that it is anything that is going to further, like the ordinance. The ordinance did. And it's hard to legislate the actual act of ethics, but you can legislate things that can improve ethics. I firmly believe in that. And the Ohio Ethics Commission monitors that and guides that. This rule really doesn't have anything that really is an enforcement type issue that we can enforce. It indicates that all members of council have a responsibility to be cognizant of existing Ohio public ethics laws, as well as to keep abreast of opinions interpreting such ethics laws and all changes to such laws as they may occur from time to time. Well, we just noted in the ordinance that it's very difficult to keep up to date on things, and then how do we measure that cognizance, and who measures it? And that's kind of subjective. And not only that, especially because a lot of the information is private or confidential. So I really don't see the need for the additional rule, because our oath of office indicates that we are going to abide by the ethics, and that we have to abide by the oath of office. And then any violations from that would go into our charter, which, as far as if you do not abide by that, then there are ways in which someone could be kind of taken care of or reprimanded in some form because of what we have in the charter. So I don't know if it's really clarifying enough, and not only that, it's very vague. I wouldn't say it's vague, but it would be very difficult to enforce this rule. And because measuring that cognizance, making sure that everybody has that information, where I don't know about all of you right now, but do you know the last 5 opinions that have been taken place at the Ohio Ethics Commission? And I'd eventually guess that almost everybody would say no, because we don't. We may have heard of one that may have taken place or something along those lines, and don't know if we really need to keep up that closely. Again, the violations of the public laws as far as the charter, it's written in the charter. I really didn't see anything additional that is not already in place with this rule. And all this rule does is brings out something where it could be asked, did you abide by Rule 14.1? And that puts the person who is really, their ability is to keep all their information confidential, but it puts them in a situation to say, yes, you win, you lose, and lose whether you answer yes or no. Because if you say yes, then you're admitting that you think that you have some kind of a violation. If you say no or no comment, then you're saying, well, it's confidential. So again, we don't have to answer that question because of it, and I think this rule might put us into a bad situation. So that's why I'm not going to support it. It's up to the full committee. I told Mr. Guthrie that. I said we're still going to, hear the rule, and all of council will have the opportunity to voice in your opinions. Okay?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I have a question. Are you talking about 14.1 in the charter?
No, in the rule. 14.1 is the new rule number. And actually,
okay.
I even say that we might want to change that to 14.A.
Okay.
Because
I wondered,
it goes
I was just reading
ABC.
that.
But there's no current rule. It
Yeah,
would become
okay, well, I didn't think.
14.1 or
Okay.
14.A. So, comments, questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The only thing, the only point I guess I'd like to make is that I don't think that that it's requiring members to stay up on every new opinion by the Ethics Commission. I think that most of that we become aware of through the training process, and the Ohio Municipal League sends out bulletins periodically that can be helpful to us. And as far as, I think you asked a question, I want to make sure I had it right, Doug. Did you say if someone asked you if you violated Rule 14.1, is that the way you worded that question?
Or abided by it.
Okay,
Anyway.
all right. Because someone could ask that very same question, and I don't know the code section off the top of my head, but someone could ask that very same question about the Ohio Revised Code section. And so whether you answered the question regarding the rule or answered the question regarding the Ohio Revised Code, the code, would sort of trump the rule anyhow. Again, the key word to me in the rule is simply that as public officials we have an obligation to be cognizant when ethics laws change, which they aren't changing very much. But there are new opinions coming out, and that's what the Ethics Commission's duty is to make us aware of during the training process. So, I think there's substance to the rule. If there is if the majority of council, feels that it needs tweaked in some way, I'm certainly open to that, and that could be done. I would have no objection if you want to hold this till the next opportunity for the Rules Committee, if people want to chime in on modifying this language. Again, my motivation is just for members of council in their rules to basically embrace Ohio's public ethics laws, and I feel that this does that. I think it was written well by Law Director Sasson. However, if the majority of council would like to see it tweaked, I don't have a problem with that. Just as I didn't have a problem with Mr. Marmee revising the legislation. But if there's not, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, because I feel all right with the language now, I would like to make a motion to adopt Rule 14.1, or if you want to change it, 14.A. The law director established it as 1, so.
So we have a motion.
I'll second it, sort of with a caveat that maybe we need to look at it and see if there's some way to, if we need an amendment to it. But.
Okay. And just to share with council, all of council that's here, I find that it's difficult to measure cognizance as far as that first section. All members of council have a responsibility to be cognizant of Ohio laws and opinions. I just find that's difficult to do. The other thing, the next area says if at any time a member of council has a question or concern regarding his or her actions and how such action may be impacted by Ohio public ethics laws and their sworn oath of office, such member shall promptly seek guidance from the Ohio Ethics Commission, including a written opinion regarding the proper legal and ethical course of conduct for such council member. I think that's a personal issue. I don't think that that's something that's a rule. Somebody who takes the oath of office, they know the responsibility, they know the Ohio Ethics Commission is there. To put it in there that it's a requirement is something I think, and that we can't ask. There's no measurement, because even if we ask, the person does not have to respond. And a failure of a response, what's that going to start as far as any kind of conflict? The compliance with Ohio public ethics laws is the personal responsibility of each council member, and violations thereof are personally responsibility of the council member. That's already set in legislation, and it's all already part of the Ohio Revised Code. Violations to the public ethics laws may result in legal action against the council member, and also pursuant to Charter Article 3.07 and 16.04. That's already in place. I mean, if somebody violates anything, or if there's any kind of an issue, the charter has that right to remove the person from council with the proper procedures. Again, they should be aware that decisions regarding compliance with the Ohio public ethics laws are personal in nature, and reliance on guidance from anyone other than personal legal counsel or the written opinions of the Ohio Ethics Commission may not provide a defense to allegations of ethical misconduct. That, in fact, actually conflicts with the above statement that says that they have to seek the Ohio Ethics Commission. It also mentions personal legal, which you can and you do have the right to talk to your own attorney or an attorney and the Ohio Ethics or the Ohio Ethics. So you can go either route, just realizing that the opinion from the person who's making the judgment is probably the best, in my opinion. Would you not agree? The Ohio Ethics Commission, they make the rules, so why wouldn't you ask for their opinion? That's just a personal opinion. Sidebar. So those are just the concerns I have, just to share. I'm not saying that, you know, I talked to the law director about this. We talked about the oath of office, and I tried to ask, you know, what in here is outside of the oath of office? And really the biggest thing is the one that the council member has to bring it forward to the Ohio Ethics Commission, including a written opinion regarding the proper legal and ethical course. Well, again, I go back to the privacy thing, and really, you know, if somebody is asked, did you abide by everything in Rule 14.A, that just puts them in a bad situation, in my opinion. And we already have other laws in place, and the Ohio Revised Code, of course, and everything, our oath of office, and it just kind of, in my opinion, it's all the same, except for that one statement in which I feel that shouldn't even be in there. So, if we would like, we can just motion to table this, and if that's the desire, and I will state that, you know, we will not go more than a month with it, because I think that it's only fair that we hear this before Mr. Guthrie, before he leaves office, in my opinion.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I don't have a problem tabling it. I just, if I could just make a comment before I make a motion, and that is that part of this is trying to protect council members and give them guidance, because I think that there have been, over the years, you know, when I was council president, I asked Doug a couple times about ethics issues, and he was always pretty quick to advise me that you really need to go to the Ethics Commission on ethics questions. And so I just think it provides good advice. If it needs, like I said, to be tweaked, I'm more than glad to move at this time to lay it on the table and maybe lay it on the table until the second committee's in December. Is that okay?
That'd be fine. Do you second that?
Yeah.
All those in favor of table signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, my motion passes 3-0. Very good. Thank you, Mr. Guthrie. Appreciate that. That concludes the rules. Next up, I believe, is capital improvements.
We'll bring the Capital Improvement Committee to order. Present is Mr. Rath, Mr. Roletta, Mr. Cost, Mr. Johnson, and myself. We have to consider resolution number 15106, appropriating monies for the current expenses of a municipal corporation. Mr. Spurgeon.
Good evening, Madam Chair. The piece before you seeks your support for desktop computers for the Division of Police. This will help us take full advantage of the records management system that we gained your support earlier in the year on.
Sorry, desktop?
Desktops. Computers.
Or is this communication between computers and squad cars, or?
No, well, secondarily, yes, but the primary use is early in the year we'd come to council for permission to buy records management software, which is maybe independent of what we're doing in the field. It'll give our officers information in the field, but that's more of a communications wireless. What this is we have older computers in the station that could we eke through with those? Yes, but they're not secure. They don't make pieces, parts for them anymore. We knew the need was there. We just want to wait till the end of the year, see if we had any bucks left to purchase them.
Okay.
Motion.
Second.
Any questions from the committee? Any questions and comments from the audience? All those in favor of passing on to full council?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Those opposed, same sign.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. That's concluded. We're adjourned. Next is personnel.
Okay, I'm going to call the Personnel Committee meeting to order. Members present are Mr. Bubb, Mr. Marmee, Mr. Guthrie, Mr. Roletta, and myself. We're here to discuss Ordinance 15-32, amending the pay range and department authorization tables of the Department of Economic and Community Development for the positions of grant writer, residential program supervisor, economic development coordinator, and office manager / account clerk, and setting compensation therefore. The positions of assistant director / planner, 2 building inspectors / lead risk assessor, 2 office assistant / account clerks, code enforcer will be abolished. And Mr. Mallard is at the podium. Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Madam Chair, and thank you. Just a few comments, I guess. What I'd like to do to lead into the legislation, just a couple of remarks. The purpose of the legislation before you is to realign the Department of Development and Community Development to better serve the interests of the City of Newark and its citizens. It also accurately will reflect the structure of the department as it exists today. Your packet also contains a copy of the past organizational chart that showed 12 positions under the director. I believe that was formed back in 2010. And that shows the current organizational chart with 4 positions under the director. We abolished the transit coordinator position earlier this year. I'm requesting the elimination of 7 positions at this time, and that's because the department has evolved in a more efficient and cost-effective model with the director and 4 staff positions. The administration feels the plan is a fiscally responsible proposal because we have modified our organizational structure to be in line with our grant budgetary resources and as a result of the staff taking on additional responsibilities and workload. So on behalf of the administration, myself, and my staff, we'd like to ask for your support. And with that being said, I'll be glad to answer any questions or comments that you may have in regards.
Okay. Okay, come on. Anybody want to make a motion or you want to ask questions? You have questions?
All my questions yet.
Okay, motion by Mr. Roletta.
Second.
Second by Mr. Guthrie. Okay, Mr. Guthrie, any questions?
Well, maybe I'll wait a minute. I'm
Okay.
assuming there are some others that do.
Anybody else in the committee who has a question? Anyone in the audience? Okay, Mark, it's up to you, I guess.
Okay, Madam Chair, I just thought maybe one thing I think, Mark, you noted in somewhere in the information you provided us, that the value of the grants that we have had come in the last 4 years. And I didn't know whether, any of the other directors like Mr. Rhodes or Mr. Spurgeon would like to comment on, the value of those grants and what they have meant, to their departments, since they are different departments that are benefiting from those grants.
Mr. Rhodes.
I'll be happy to speak to the parks. We have a wonderful pool now, the Hollander Pool. We have a first-class Everett Park. We're going to get significant improvements at Levin Park that hasn't been done for years. We've got dollars out for a downtown entrance, a grant that we were awarded through the Licking County Foundation. We hope to move the seal that's on the highway there to the downtown area, but that's going to be done with grant dollars. Two funders, all of which were found through Department of Development. So invaluable, to be honest with you. If we don't have grant dollars, we don't have anything extra in the city of Newark. I mean, that's what it comes down to, because the things we're doing, we could not do with general fund dollars. The cemetery is going to be a recipient of some of those grant dollars coming up with additional roadway. You can take a look at Everett Park. We've got a nice walking path there. We've got baseball diamonds. We've got a nice frisbee golf course. I mean, invaluable.
Thank you.
Mr. Spurgeon.
Yes, Madam Chair. A few come to mind in my division, and certainly Barbara's been invaluable helping me. The Moving High Forward grants, we demolished 50 structures. Numerous grants and benefits the Division of Police, Fire, and EMS as well.
Thank you. Anyone else up here have any questions or comments? Go ahead.
If I could, Madam Chair, I just wanted to, first I want to thank both David and Bill for those comments, and I did, one thing I wanted to share, I don't know whether, I know you're not going to have to listen to me talk about my past much longer, but I did want to share that I was a development director with OSU for a period of time when I directed the Mortarboard National Foundation, and in that role, I found out, writing grants, the importance of having to follow those grants up and having to sort of usher them through. Mark, can you talk a little bit about the importance of that? And also, Mark, I think that if I understand correctly, that 3 of the 4 staff members, current staff members, or 3 of 4 positions, maybe 3 or 5 positions, are actually affected in that. Well, not with the legislation, right? There will be a move within the department that will result in an upgrade for an employee who's going to be taking on more work.
Right. The account clerk, Mark, will go to the office manager account clerk position.
And then there's also going to be an upgrade for the economic development coordinator position, which
Correct.
You're hoping to fill at some point in time.
Correct. I guess to respond to you, I've learned a lot about grants in the last 4 years since I've been here. What I've learned, a lot of it's come from our grant writer, Barbara Gilks. And I know working with her on a day-to-day basis, there is a lot of time and effort, Mark, that goes into this. Number one, to get the grants and to get the award of the grant, you've got to do a lot of due diligence to do a good application. And I know one of the things that Barbara really struggles with is it takes a lot of follow-up to deal with the people. For example, the police department, the fire department, the people she's working toward those grants for, she requires a lot of feedback, a lot of information, again, to enhance that application, which then ultimately enhances your opportunity of getting that grant. So there is a lot of work that goes in behind the scenes that a lot of people aren't even aware of.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyone else? I just want to say, Mr. Maunder made a presentation at my church this summer to one of those community luncheons that we had. And he gave a very comprehensive report. I don't know how many pages it was, but of everything the development department does. And I remember saying at the end of that, and he does it with 5 people, including himself. I mean, the list is huge of all the projects that this department is involved in with such a small staff. And those of us who've been around a while remember how busy, how many other people were there. And I just want to compliment you and the department on that. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Was that it? Yes? Okay, 4-1. Okay, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
We are done. Thank you very much.
Thank you.